Hello, once again, everybody. It is time for another Beyond the Benches video. We are here not to talk about baseball, even though we're getting up, we're ready to go to the game tonight, exciting times, but we are here to talk about something that is fast approaching, and that is the college football season, and more specifically, one division in particular. What would that be, CJ?
That would be the SEC East, because we all know what's happening in the West. It's going to be Alabama, no given fight. I mean, the only thing that would happen, and for any SEC West team to really be in any contention, if Nick Saban gets fired or some God-forgiven miracle, or everybody on Alabama gets suspended or hurt, which, of course, at Alabama, nobody's going to self-suspend their players. So the SEC West is pretty much a lockup every year. Now, as far as the East, it comes down typically between two teams. You'll luckily get the one team that decides they wants to play a role, whether it be a couple of years ago and it being South Carolina, or the one year that Missouri was there, or the every once in a while, lately, they haven't been making a big push, but they've been making a noticeable push in Vanderbilt. Of course, Vanderbilt, they didn't beat Florida, they beat Georgia, they beat Tennessee, which is hilarious, even though it's not hilarious that they beat my boys. The SEC West, SEC East, it really mainly comes down between two teams in Georgia and Florida, but you have one team every year or multiple years in a row that decides, you know what, we're gonna make a little
join the party.
Yeah,
right?
We're gonna make it a little harder for Georgia or Florida this year.
Sit at the table with the big boys.
Yeah, and last year it was Tennessee. I dislike those guys hardcore, but you got to give credit when credit is due. Even though their win over Georgia was luck, their win over Florida was it was time. It was time. It was due. It was due.
We'll let you have that one. Do you think that third team in the SEC East will be Tennessee again,
No.
or is it a new team?
No. Granted, I'm saying this with full-heartedly, no dislike towards them, no disrespect towards them in this particular point. They have a lot of new faces this year. As much as they have as returning faces, most of those guys were not starters. Most of those guys were guys who came in and started for injured players that have already been injured and already graduated. Granted, they do get I think they get an extra year of eligibility if they're hurt for their senior year. I don't know how that works out, but they lost a lot of players this year. They lost their main winner. I will count on multiple hands how many times I criticized Joshua Dobbs, but what did he do? He won Tennessee football games.
And they, you look at the quarterback position, the running back, several spots on defense are going to need some readjusting. And I still like the Tennessee team, and I would probably say they're still the third team, not because of Tennessee. I just don't really buy into anyone else.
I don't buy into South Carolina and their hype. I don't buy into Vanderbilt and their hype. I don't buy into Kentucky and their hype. So, I mean, if you look, the two teams that always fight it out, Georgia and Florida, they're expected to be there. But the other, I shouldn't say bottom feeders, I should say lesser teams, they're all being hyped up this year to give Georgia and Florida their run this year, and I don't see it happening.
No.
Maybe they get themselves a couple of decent recruits as the year goes on. As the years go on, maybe if they get themselves some better coaches. I don't think Will Muschamp's the answer in South Carolina. I don't think Butch Jones is the answer in Tennessee. Those, and I don't see how Kentucky even plays into any effect just because they got one running back. So, there are teams in the East that can make noise, but let's be real.
Now, obviously, on the West side, it's Alabama and everybody else.
Yeah.
However, that second spot can still be very important.
Yes,
if it's
it still can.
If it's a good record, you could be talking about a New Year's Eve bowl. You could be talking about big things. What's the team that you're like, I think that's the second best? Probably won't challenge Alabama unless, like you said, something unexpected happens. But who do you think is the second best team in the West?
Texas A&M. I think it's Texas A&M. I think they got a lot of offensive power. I think that even though they lost Myles Garrett, they still have a lot of other good pieces on their defense. I mean, Myles Garrett had a lot of help last year. I mean, you just don't do it by yourself. Myles Garrett is Simeon Rice. Myles Garrett is that edge speed rusher. I said Simeon Rice because when I think of fast, speedy rushers, I think of one guy that played for us. I think of think of Simeon Rice. You could also think of Reggie White. You could think of many other greats. He was fast, off the edge, and he didn't do it all by himself. So you got to have a lot of power and a lot of force in the middle in order to get your edges to an advantage. And the same goes around. You got to have a lot of speed on your edge to help the middle. I think, like I said, A&M has a lot of extra pieces on defense that'll help. I think they have a lot of firepower on offense that'll help. I can't remember their running back's name, but they have a really decent running back and a decent quarterback tandem. So from the one game I did watch last year, just so happens to be against Tennessee, they gave it was a dogfight down to the end, and it was an offensive game. So I really think that Texas A&M could be the one team to spark things up in the West. I mean, you can't count out. My personal favorite, other than Alabama, would probably also be Auburn. I don't like Auburn. They're the South's deepest rivalry. You can't like them. But if I had to pick a favorite as far as the way the team is coming along, I think Auburn. Now, if Auburn can get themselves a decent quarterback and a decent couple of offensive pieces, they're there. They're missing a quarterback, a receiver, and an offensive line. They've got the defense. I think they got the defense. I mean, they held Clemson to 13 points last year, and they went on to win the national championship. They gave Georgia a fight, which last year wasn't quite the accomplishment, even though that's a rivalry game. Everybody's going to play that game tough. So, I mean, you could also a lot of people would throw LSU in the mix and Mississippi State in the mix. I think, even though Coach O took over last year for LSU, I think with the players that they lost in the draft, I don't think that LSU is the team to beat.
I think they've lost a lot of trust. People were relying on them to kind of challenge Alabama someday, and now people have kind of moved on, and maybe in Auburn, which is
and now they're too
kind
busy,
of the favorites teams.
And
but I like the Texas A&M one because I agree, and I haven't heard as much love for Texas A&M, so I kind of like that you had that kind of shout out for them. I'm going to go ahead and run through my SEC West and SEC East predictions, and I'll let you respond with your own and kind of close up that way. Obviously, in the West, I'm going to go with Ole Miss at the last place. I don't know if they're the least talented team.
It's just what's going on over there.
But holy moly, that's a whole...
It's just a big mess. It's just a big mess what they have down there over in...
New coach now that you got to get in there. So number 6 and number 5. Number 6, I'm going to go with Mississippi State. And number 5, I'm going to go with Arkansas. Both teams, I think they're good. Probably bowl teams.
Yeah.
But when you look at the rest of the SEC West, you're like,
The SEC West, I mean, like I said, it comes down to Alabama, but everybody else in there, they all got it's all a dogfight from second to the bottom. So.
Okay. Number 4, I'm going to go with LSU. I've kind of given up on them. Number 3, I'm going to go Auburn. Number 2, I'm going to go Texas
when your
A&M.
university owns this other university, it's kind of, I mean, they have to beat them in baseball, they beat them in football. Come on now. LSU is property of Florida.
Absolutely. And now, number 2, Texas A&M, and number 1, shocker, Alabama.
Yeah.
So, newsflash. That's a new one. Now, in the SEC East, we'll see what you think about this one. Number 7, I'm going to go Missouri.
Yeah, I can see that. I
think I can find Conference USA offenses that are better than the offense Missouri will put on the field. It's pretty bad. Vanderbilt, I like them, and I've liked them more the last 2 years. The problem is they kind of had their high these last 2 seasons with beating a couple teams, being pretty decent, and then along came the NFL draft, and Zach Cunningham, you're gone. Most of their cornerbacks, you're gone. So now I think they're kind of starting
all the way over. But I like their coach. Their coach has a very good mindset.
And they have some players.
If you put that coach in, say, Georgia system, or you put that or with the Georgia Athletics,
more recruits.
Yeah, you put him in a Georgia Athletics. You put him in a Florida Athletics. You put him in a Michigan Athletics. Somebody with more money than Vanderbilt. They're getting more recruits. They're getting. You see the talent in the players. I like Vanderbilt's coach.
Yeah. Number 5, I'm going to go with Kentucky. Maybe a bowl game. I'll probably say no to that too. Number 4, I'm going to give it to South Carolina. Mainly because in the SEC there's not many quarterbacks. Most teams don't have a quarterback, or they're looking for one, or even if you have a good one, they're young. Even probably one of the best would be a Jacob Eason, and even him you would like to see a little more improvement.
Yes, I mean...
So, I think the fact that South Carolina actually has a quarterback that I like is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I think they'll make a bowl game mostly because of him.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback is the game changer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how many games last year would Georgia have lost versus the ones that they would not have? They should have beat Tennessee. They would not have been in that fight without Eason. They wouldn't have beaten Missouri without Eason. They wouldn't have beaten South Carolina without Eason, and they wouldn't have beaten Auburn without Eason. That's 4 losses off of the 8 they already have.
North Carolina, I can think of. Definitely, he played a big role. Now I'm going to give my top 3, and then I'm going to give you a chance to respond to my predictions as a whole, and we'll wrap it up here. Number 3, Tennessee. Like I said, probably not as good, but I just don't really like anybody else there.
I see that.
And then I have both Florida and Georgia with the same record. The same overall record, but I'm going to give it to my Gators in the cocktail party, which we're going to.
Ugh.
And
They can't lose it 2 years in a row.
That would be actually 3 or 4, but nonetheless.
No, in our present,
Well,
it would be 4 years in a row.
Right, of course. But in front of us, you got to get back at me. But I'm going to give it to Florida only because, and I said this last year, and then it wasn't true, but I'm going to say it again and hope it's not, hope it for the same thing. The quarterback play can't get worse, right? So we'll see. I say that every year.
It didn't get worse last year, but it just wasn't good enough. I mean, Luke Del Rio, before his shoulder issue, he was lighting it up. Yep. He was the guy. Then he got a shoulder issue, and that completely messed everything up. Yep. And Austin Appleby, he didn't do bad, but he just didn't do good enough.
No, I mean, listen, when you're saying, hey, that quarterback that never really meant anything to Purdue, and you're going to rely on him, that kind of tells you where your quarterback position is.
It takes me back to the first time. You remember Friday Night Lights. We love that show. It's one of my top favorite shows. It takes me back to the first time Matt Saracen started the game. Yeah. Then you think, all the games you think Austin Appleby started, you think of Coach Taylor walking over there, smacking him on the shoulder, good old shoulder pad, and saying, Saracen, good game, but it wasn't good enough. That is what I think about with Austin Appleby. No disrespect to the guy. He played his heart out, but it just wasn't enough for the Gators.
What is your SEC East predictions?
I agree with everything down at the bottom. I see how you can make the points. I'd switch a few around depending on their schedule. I didn't look at everybody's schedule, but I mean, you look at the top 3. I could see anybody could finish in that 3rd spot. It's not a guarantee any given Saturday. But, you just, with Tennessee, you kind of just want to just put them there because that's kind of where they belong. As far as the top 2, yeah, you're probably right. If I were to say Georgia, it would be mostly out of pure, the word I'm looking for, homerish pick. So it wouldn't surprise me, but...
I mean, to be fair, though, you look at that game, and it is a 50-50 game.
Yes.
It's who shows up on that day, and that game could basically determine the whole
You know what I really want? Last year was a tight game until Florida started to run away with it because we had no offense. But if you give these two a good old-fashioned slobber knocker slinging kind of game.
High-scoring game.
I watched it over the summer so far. The 2002 SEC champion, listen to me. The 2002 cocktail party was a night game. If you watch that game, that is the game I hope for this coming up October. It was a fight back and forth game. It was like a 2-point difference the whole night. And David Green versus the Rex Grossman. Two great quarterbacks in their college time. You look at it's probably going to be Franks. It could be he's the kid from Notre Dame.
Malik Zaire.
Thank you. It could be him. They could be both helping out there. It could be Ethan and taking a role of David Green.
Yeah.
Please let him do better in the red zone. But it could take difference. So this game, every year, it comes between 2 teams for the SEC East. Too bad.
A lot of people got that game circled. I mean, things should change, but a lot of people feel like that is the game to watch.
You got a couple games you're excited for every year, but nothing means more than Georgia versus Florida.
All right, well, there it is. That is some of our thoughts on some college football. Obviously, July, a little bit of a slow month. Not too much going on, but NBA's approaching, football's approaching, so expect more and more videos. CJ, sign us off.
As usual, people, thank you for watching. Oh, I didn't see that.